I'm standing in our kitchen on a Saturday morning, holding a cream-colored envelope. The weight of it feels wrong, heavier than paper should be. Behind me, Marcus is leaning against the counter with this expression I've never seen before. Not angry, not sad, almost relieved? He's laughing, actually laughing, which makes my stomach flip in ways I can't explain yet. "Open it," he says, and there's something final in those two words. My hands are shaking as I slide my finger under the seal. Inside is a single document, and as I read the first line, the kitchen tilts. Divorce papers. He's already signed. His signature is right there, crisp, confident, dated 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. While we were planning this stupid anniversary party, while I was ordering his favorite cake from that bakery in Riverside, while I was telling my sister everything was perfect. "You're free now, Lida," he says, and he's still smiling. The envelope slips from my fingers and falls onto the marble countertop. Some part of my brain registers that this is the moment everything breaks. This is the point where my life splits into before and after. But let me back up, because you need to understand what it looked like before the envelope. You need to know what I thought I had. We bought the house in Millbrook Estates 5 years ago. It's the kind of place you drive past and think, that's success. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a kitchen that opens onto a family room with vaulted ceilings. The HOA fees are steep, $425 a month, but the neighborhood is immaculate. Every lawn is mowed on Saturday mornings. Every driveway is perfectly sealed. The mailboxes are all the same shade of bronze. Marcus and I closed on it in April, and I remember standing in the empty living room, our footsteps echoing off the hardwood, and feeling like I'd finally arrived somewhere. Like all the years of being careful with money, of saying no to vacations and new clothes and going out to eat, had finally paid off. I met Marcus at a gym in 2015. I was 28, working as an office manager at a dental practice, making decent money, but nothing spectacular. He was a commercial real estate broker, handsome in that clean-cut way, always wearing pressed shirts and driving a Range Rover. When he started talking to me by the water fountain, I thought he was out of my league. When he asked me to dinner, I almost said no, because I was convinced it was a pity thing, or a mistake. But he was persistent, he was kind, he remembered things I told him, that I hated cilantro, that my mom had raised me alone, that I'd always wanted to see the Pacific Ocean. 6 months later, we were talking about moving in together. 2 years later, he proposed at the same restaurant where we'd had our first date, and I cried so hard I couldn't get the ring on my finger. The wedding was small. My mom, his parents, a few friends. We got married at the courthouse because Marcus said big weddings were a waste of money, and I agreed with him. We were practical. We were a team. After we bought the house, I became obsessed with making it perfect. I spent weekends at Home Depot, picking out paint colors and lighting fixtures. I planted a garden in the backyard, hydrangeas and roses, things that took planning and patience. I joined a book club with the neighbors. I started hosting dinner parties. This was my life now. This was what success looked like. Marcus was traveling more for work, but that made sense. He was climbing the ladder, closing bigger deals. He'd be gone Sunday through Wednesday some weeks, and I'd stay home, working my job remotely, tending the garden, keeping the house exactly the way he liked it. Dinner on the table at 6, everything organized, everything controlled. My best friend Jennifer would sometimes say things like, "Do you ever just do something spontaneous?" Or, "When was the last time you two went out without a plan?" And I'd laugh it off. That's not who we were. We were builders. We had a 5-year plan. We were saving for a second property. My mom visited once a month, usually on a Sunday. She'd bring pie or a casserole, and we'd sit in the kitchen where I'd now be standing, holding divorce papers, and she'd ask me how things were really going. Not the surface stuff, the underneath. "Everything's good, Mom," I'd tell her, and I meant it. Or I thought I meant it. There's a difference, I think, between meaning something and believing it. 3 weeks before the anniversary party, Marcus came home from a trip to Phoenix with his phone buzzing constantly, text after text. He'd check it, type something quick, and put it away. Nothing unusual, really. He always had his phone on him. But something about the way he was doing it felt different, more secretive. I didn't ask about it. That's the thing I keep replaying in my head. I didn't ask. If I'd asked, maybe he would have told me, or maybe he would have lied, and I would have known to start looking for answers. Instead, I just let it sit there, this small, strange thing, like a pebble in my shoe that I was trying to ignore. And then, on the Tuesday before our party, his mom called me. Linda. She's always been kind to me, or at least civil, though Marcus has told me before that she doesn't think anyone is good enough for him. Lida, honey, she said, and her voice had that careful quality it gets when she's about to say something uncomfortable. I just wanted to check in. How are things? They're great, I said automatically. We're having a party this weekend. Just a small thing, some friends from the neighborhood. There was a pause, a long one. That's wonderful, she said finally. I'm sure Marcus is really looking forward to it. Something in the way she said his name made my breath catch. But then she was saying goodbye and talking about sending a nice wine, and I convinced myself I was imagining things. That's when the first real crack appeared. Not big enough to see through yet, but there. A hairline fracture in the foundation. I just didn't know how deep it went. I didn't ask him about the phone calls. That's what haunts me now. Not the calls themselves, but my own cowardice. The party was Saturday evening. We'd invited maybe 30 people, neighbors from the HOA, a few couples from Marcus's work, Jennifer and her husband. I spent all day Friday decorating the backyard. String lights, which I'd hung myself because Marcus was in meetings all day. White tablecloths. A playlist I'd curated for hours. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to look like we were exactly what I believed we were. My mom called that afternoon while I was arranging flower centerpieces. "Sweetie, I'm so excited to see you tomorrow," she said. There was something off in her voice, the same careful tone his mom had used. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Why would something be wrong?" "Because you sound weird." She laughed, but it didn't reach through the phone naturally. "I just love you, that's all." I should have pushed, should have asked her directly what she knew. But I was terrified of the answer, so instead I said, "I love you too," and went back to the flowers. Marcus came home around 6. He showered, changed into the navy shirt I'd laid out for him, the one that makes his eyes look darker, and helped me light the candles. We didn't talk much. He seemed distracted, checking his phone every few minutes. When I asked if he was okay, he just said he was tired from traveling. By 7:30, people were arriving. Jennifer hugged me in the kitchen and whispered, "You look amazing. How are you so calm?" I told her I'd had 3 coffees and 2 glasses of wine, which made her laugh. What I didn't say was that I wasn't calm at all. I was performing calm. There's a difference. The party was beautiful. People were happy, the food was good, and Marcus played the part of the devoted husband perfectly. His hand on my back when we stood in groups, his arm around my waist during photos. He even made a toast, something about how lucky he was, how I'd transformed our house into a home, how I was his partner in everything. His partner in everything. I watched him say the words, and something in my chest twisted. He was looking right at me, and I could see absolutely nothing true in his face. Around 10, when people were starting to leave, his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and I saw his jaw tighten. He excused himself and stepped into the garage. I waited 5 minutes, then followed him. Through the door window, I could see him pacing, the phone to his ear, his free hand gesturing. He was talking to someone, and the conversation was heated. "No," he was saying. "We talked about this. No, I can't do that. Not tomorrow." I knocked softly on the door. He spun around, and for just a second, maybe half a second, I saw something raw and guilty flash across his face. Then he composed himself. "I have to go," he said into the phone, and hung up. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, work thing, nothing to worry about." But his hands were shaking. That night, after everyone left and I was loading the dishwasher, Marcus came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. It felt different than it had during the party. Sad, maybe. Resigned. "You did good today," he said. "Really good." I turned around. "Thank you. I wanted it to be special." He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I know you did." He kissed the top of my head and went upstairs to bed. I finished the dishes alone, standing at the sink in our perfect kitchen, in our perfect house, in our perfect neighborhood. And I finally let myself acknowledge what I'd been avoiding. Something was ending. I could feel it the way you can feel a storm coming, the pressure in the air, the way everything goes too quiet before the wind hits. I went to bed around 1 in the morning. Marcus was already asleep, turned away from me, his shoulders rigid. I lay there for hours, listening to him breathe, wondering who he'd been talking to, what he couldn't do tomorrow, and why he'd already signed the divorce papers 2 weeks ago while I was planning this party like a woman who still believed her marriage was real. Sunday morning, I woke to him placing an envelope on my nightstand. "Happy anniversary," he said quietly, and left the room. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The first line of the divorce petition was already a blur through my tears. I didn't even need to read the rest. I understood immediately what had happened. While I'd been watering the hydrangeas and ordering cake and hanging string lights, he'd been ending us. I sat on that bed in the morning light, the papers in my lap, and I felt my entire world reorganize itself. Not slowly, all at once. The house suddenly felt enormous and cold. The perfect kitchen downstairs felt like a stage set for a show that had just closed. The garden I'd spent 3 years cultivating felt like a monument to my own delusion. Jennifer called me that afternoon. "Hey, how was the cleanup? I meant to help you last night, but got a call that—" "He filed for divorce," I interrupted. My voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. "He handed me the papers this morning." Silence. "Lida, oh my God, what? When?" 2 weeks ago. He already signed, he just gave them to me yesterday. After the party, after the toast. That's insane. Did you guys have problems? I had no idea." "I didn't either," I said, and that's when I started crying. Not pretty crying, the kind where you can't breathe and your whole body shakes and you feel like you're being torn apart from the inside. Jennifer came over within 20 minutes. She found me sitting on the kitchen floor, our perfect kitchen floor, with the papers scattered around me like confetti. She sat down next to me and just let me fall apart against her shoulder. "We need to call someone," she said finally. "A lawyer. You need a divorce attorney immediately." I nodded, but I couldn't move. I was thinking about the house, the mortgage, the $425 a month HOA fees that now felt like they were bleeding me dry. I was thinking about my 401k, which I had no idea how to even access. I was thinking about my credit score, which I'd worked so hard to maintain, and what would happen to it if this went badly. I was thinking about how stupid I'd been. Marcus came down around dinner time. He looked at me, at Jennifer, at the divorce papers spread across the marble counter, and something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, not regret, more like annoyance that I was still here, still crying, still making this difficult. "I think it's better if we do this cleanly," he said. "No preamble, no explanation. I'm not trying to hurt you, but we both know this hasn't been working." "It's been working fine," I said, my voice hoarse. "I didn't know it wasn't working." "That's the problem, isn't it?" He said it almost gently. "You didn't know, because you didn't want to know." Jennifer's hand on my shoulder tightened. "You need to leave," she said to Marcus, her voice sharp. "Get out of this house right now." For a moment I thought he'd argue, but he just nodded, grabbed his keys from the counter and walked out. The door closed behind him, and the sound of it echoed through the house like a gunshot. I sat there in the silence, and for the first time since reading those papers, I felt something other than shock and grief. I felt rage, and underneath the rage, something harder, clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself, when you stop being a victim in your own story and start being the protagonist. I looked at Jennifer. "I need that lawyer's number," I said, "and I need to know everything you know about Marcus. Everything. Because he's not taking this house from me without a fight." She pulled out her phone. "I know someone. She's aggressive. She'll make sure you're protected." That was Monday morning. By Monday evening, I'd hired Patricia Reeves, a divorce attorney with an office in a building downtown and a reputation for destroying ex-husbands in court. By Wednesday, she'd filed my response to his petition, and things had started to get very, very real. Marcus had listed the house as a marital asset to be sold, with the proceeds split 50-50. He wanted his 401k untouched. He wanted to keep the Range Rover, and he'd listed his reason for divorce as irreconcilable differences, which was technically true, but also a lie so big it made me want to scream, because I still didn't know what the differences were. I still didn't know who he'd been talking to on the phone. I still didn't know what he couldn't do tomorrow. Patricia called me on Friday. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," she said. "Is there any possibility your husband is having an affair?" The question hung in the air between us. I thought about the phone calls, the secrecy, the way he'd looked at me during the toast like he was saying goodbye. "I think so," I said quietly, "but I don't have proof." "Then we need to get proof," Patricia said, "because if we can prove infidelity, the court might look more favorably on you in the settlement, especially regarding the house." That was when I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to find out who she was, and I was going to use it. It was Monday when I finally saw the text message. Marcus had left his iPad on the kitchen counter, our kitchen counter, the one where he'd handed me the envelope, and it buzzed with a notification. A text from someone named Alex. "Can't wait to show you the place. I think you're going to love it. Are you telling her this week?" My hands were steady as I took a screenshot. Then another. Then I opened the message thread and scrolled back through months of conversation. Months of plans, of inside jokes, of "I love you" messages that made me feel physically sick. Alex wasn't just someone he was talking to on the phone. Alex was someone he was building a life with, and he'd been doing it the entire time I thought we were building ours. Character names and verified details from text. Protagonist, Lida. Husband, Marcus. Best friend, Jennifer, has a husband. Marcus's mother, Linda. Protagonist's mother, unnamed, visits monthly, brings pie/casserole. Lawyer, Patricia Reeves. Unknown person, Alex, revealed as affair partner. Locations and figures from text. House, Millbrook Estates, 3-bed, 2.5 bath, closed April, 5 years ago. HOA fees, $425 per month. Met Marcus, 2015, at gym. Married, courthouse wedding, small ceremony. Mom visits, once a month, usually Sundays. Anniversary party, Saturday evening, approximately 30 guests. Phoenix trip, mentioned, before party week. Downtown, Patricia Reeves's office location. Current word count check, approximately 9,950 characters, including spaces and punctuation, within target range of 9,800 to 10,200. I stared at those text messages for so long that my vision started to blur. Alex. Who the hell was Alex? I scrolled back further, hands shaking now, past months of "I miss you" and "can't wait to be with you" and "she suspects nothing." That last one, "she suspects nothing." I took my phone to the bathroom and locked the door. Then I called Patricia. "I have something," I said. "Messages, on his iPad, from someone named Alex. He's been planning something with them. A place. He asked if Marcus was telling me." "Don't touch anything else on that device," Patricia said immediately. "Screenshot everything, every message, every date, everything. Then I'm sending someone to your house to document and preserve it. This is huge, Lida. This changes everything." By Friday, Patricia had filed a motion to require Marcus to produce his communications. By the following Wednesday, his lawyer's response came back claiming the messages were personal and irrelevant to the dissolution of the marriage. But they weren't irrelevant. They were evidence of premeditation, evidence that he'd been planning this with someone else while telling me everything was fine. Marcus moved into a rental apartment downtown. He didn't fight me on most of the financial disclosure, probably because his lawyer told him that fighting would look worse when the affair became part of the record. But he was still insisting on selling the house, 50-50 split, clean break. That's when I made the decision that would flip everything. I hired a private investigator. His name was Tom Westfield, and he came highly recommended by Patricia. He was older, maybe 60, with the kind of tired eyes that come from seeing too much of people's worst behavior. We met in his office on a Thursday afternoon, and I brought him everything I had. Screenshots of messages, dates, times, the phone call I'd heard Marcus having in the garage. I need to know who Alex is, I told him, and I need to know what they're planning. Tom nodded slowly. This is going to cost you. My rate is $2.50 an hour plus expenses. I don't care, I said, whatever it takes. He found her in 4 days. Alexandra Summers, 29 years old, marketing director at a commercial real estate firm, Marcus's firm. They'd been working together for 2 years, and they'd been sleeping together for at least 8 months. Tom had photos, them entering a hotel together, leaving restaurants, standing very close in a parking garage with his hand on her back. He also had the real estate listing for the place they'd been talking about, a condo in the Arts District, 2 bedrooms, listed at $480,000. It was already in contract. Marcus's name wasn't on it yet, but Tom had found an email trail showing that he'd been pre-approved for the mortgage. They were planning to move in together as soon as the divorce was final. While I was planning our anniversary party, while I was ordering his favorite cake, while I was telling my best friend everything was perfect, he was financing a life with someone else. I sat in Tom's office looking at the photographs, and I felt something crystallize inside me. Not anger, though there was plenty of that. Something colder. Clarity. The kind that comes when you stop being a victim and start being strategic. I need to use this, I told Tom, in court, against him. You can, Tom said. It's admissible. Infidelity, financial deception, planning to hide assets. A judge is going to see this and it's going to hurt him badly. Your settlement offer just went up significantly. I left his office and drove straight to Patricia's. She reviewed everything, the photos, the emails, the mortgage pre-approval, and actually smiled. It was the first time I'd seen her smile since I'd hired her. This is excellent, she said. This is really excellent. He's been conducting a full affair while maintaining a marriage, taking on new financial obligations, and planning to liquidate marital assets to finance his new life. A judge will see this as bad faith. We're going to ask for the house. We're going to ask for his 401k, and we're going to ask for attorney fees. Can we do that? I asked. We can ask. Whether we get it depends on the judge, but your chances are good. 2 weeks later, we went to court. Marcus showed up with his lawyer, a slick guy named Bradley, who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog for corporate attorneys. Marcus himself looked different, smaller somehow, even though he was wearing an expensive suit. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. The judge was a woman named Morrison, probably in her 60s, with reading glasses on a chain, and an expression that suggested she'd seen every version of this exact story before. Patricia presented the evidence methodically. The screenshots, the photos, the mortgage pre-approval, the condo listing, the timeline, how he'd filed for divorce while still maintaining the appearance of a marriage, while planning a life with someone else, while I was operating under the assumption that we were a team. I watched Marcus's face as it all came out. His jaw tightened. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. He shook his head. When it was Bradley's turn, he tried to argue that the affair was irrelevant, that it didn't constitute grounds for a different settlement because we lived in a no-fault divorce state. But Judge Morrison wasn't having it. Mr. Chen, she said, looking directly at Marcus, you initiated this divorce while maintaining a marital relationship with your wife. You've been conducting an affair with a colleague. You've taken on new financial obligations, a mortgage pre-approval for a property worth nearly $500,000, while claiming the marital assets need to be liquidated to provide you with fair compensation. That looks like bad faith to me. She turned to me. Ms. Lida, you're asking for the house, his 401k contributions made during the marriage, and attorney fees. Is that correct? Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor. I'm granting it, Judge Morrison said. The house remains the property of Ms. Lida. The 401k will be divided according to the QDRO we'll discuss after this hearing. And Mr. Chen will pay Ms. Lida's attorney fees in full. This marriage is dissolved. She banged her gavel and suddenly it was over. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt empty, the way you feel after you've been holding your breath for so long that you forget what normal breathing feels like. Outside the courthouse, Marcus's lawyer tried to pull him away, but Marcus stopped. He looked at me for the first time in weeks. "You knew about Alex?" he asked quietly. "I do now," I said. "I was going to tell you. Eventually. I didn't know how." I almost laughed. "You handed me divorce papers on our anniversary, Marcus. You didn't have to know how. You just had to be honest." He opened his mouth like he was going to say something else, then closed it. His lawyer touched his arm and they walked away. Jennifer was waiting for me in the courthouse parking lot. She'd come to support me, even though I'd told her she didn't have to. When she saw my face, she pulled me into a hug. "You won," she said. "You actually won." "I kept the house," I said. It was the only thing I could focus on, the only thing that felt real. "You did more than that," Jennifer said. "You stood up for yourself. You got the truth. That matters." I nodded, but I wasn't sure I believed her. The house felt different when I came home that night, not because anything had physically changed, but because I was different. I walked through each room, the perfect kitchen, the vaulted ceilings, the garden I'd spent 3 years cultivating, and I tried to figure out how to live here without him, how to make it mean something other than failure. My mom called that evening. "Sweetheart," I heard, "how are you doing?" "I'm okay," I said, and I meant it in the way that people mean it when they've survived something. Not happy, not healed, just okay. "I'm proud of you," she said, "for fighting, for not just accepting what he gave you." "I should have seen it coming," I said. "I should have known." "You trusted him. That's not a character flaw, Lida. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage." We talked for a while longer, about practical things, the mortgage, the property taxes, whether I should keep the house or sell it. By the time we hung up, it was late, and I was exhausted in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. I went to bed in what was now officially my house, in the bedroom where Marcus had left me divorce papers on our anniversary morning, and for the first time since opening that envelope, I didn't cry. I just lay there in the dark, and I thought about who I was going to be now. Not the woman who'd watered roses while her marriage died. Not the woman who'd planned a party for a man who was already gone. Someone new. Someone who knew what she was worth. The next morning, I called a realtor. Not to sell the house, I wasn't ready for that yet, but to get it appraised, to understand what I actually owned. When Margaret the realtor walked through, she kept saying things like, "beautiful bones," and "great bones," and "so much potential." "What would you list it for?" I asked her. "In this market, probably around $680,000, she said. "Maybe $700,000 if you make some updates. It's a solid property. You should be proud of what you and your husband built here." I didn't correct her about the husband part. Instead, I just nodded and walked her to the door. That night, I stood in the backyard looking at the hydrangeas and roses I'd planted. They were blooming beautifully. It was late spring now, and everything was in full color. For 3 years, I'd tended these plants, thinking they were part of something permanent, part of a life with someone who loved me. But they were still beautiful. They didn't know about Marcus. They didn't know about the affair or the divorce or the lies. They just knew sun and water and soil, and they grew anyway. I realized I could keep this house. I could sell it. I could tear out the garden and plant something completely different. The choice was mine now. That was the thing about surviving. You got to decide what came next. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Coffee tomorrow? I want to hear everything about court." I texted back, "Yes, and thank you, for everything." She responded immediately. "That's what best friends do. We show up. Now go get some sleep, you've earned it." I went inside and locked the door behind me. My door, my lock, my house. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The envelope was still on the kitchen counter, the divorce papers inside it. I picked it up and walked to the recycling bin. I didn't open it. I didn't look at Marcus's signature or read through his lies one more time. I just dropped it in and closed the lid. He'd given me freedom, just not the way he'd intended. Not as a gift, as a consequence. And I was finally ready to live it.